Hello, welcome back to another edition of Hobby News Daily. I'm still Danny Black, but I am joined today by Annemarie, better known as at Women on Tops on Instagram. What's going on?
Not much. Thanks for having me. Like to nerd out about cardboard with fellow cardboard nerds. So it's all good for me.
I figured we could nerd out, not on camera or on camera, so we can share it with some people.
Other nerds,
Um,
bring the nerds
uh,
in together. Let's talk about cardboard.
Nerd power. Um, so I just want to get a little bit of background because I think people see the Instagram account,
Hmm.
but don't know as much behind where it came from or how it evolved. And I just think it's fascinating talking to you and your story and how much of a you are a freaking hardcore collector. And I really respect that.
That sounds like a diagnosis. A hardcore collector. Like I'm weapons grade collector. Whatever. Yeah.
You are. You're. It's what do they call it? Of the chief commander of NATO allied forces. That's the type of collector. No, I'm kidding. So let's just get to the beginning of it. When did you first get involved in sports at all? Who were your teams, and when did you start collecting cards?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, my interest in cards grew out of my interest in sports, both playing and spectating, and very much was a way to connect with my father because he liked cards as kids. And my family, I'm from Jersey, which is why I talk really fast and sometimes curse and a terrible driver. And so a big part of my sports story is baseball. My family has been connected through my great grandfather, who was the first publicist for the Yankees. So my dad basically grew up in the dugout in the late 50s and 60s, which was probably one of the greatest times to be a kid when your grandfather is a sport agent and publicist.
That's amazing.
And I started playing sports when I was young. I mostly played softball, soccer, basketball. I really love baseball cards. I think like the 1987. I'm like I was born in 78, so like the 1987 tops, like with that brown border, like oh, so awesome, right?
That
Like
Mark McGuire, I'll
oh
never
my
forget.
God.
Yeah.
I was, if Kevin Seitzer had worked out, I would not have to, damn you, McDonald. I would not have to work. And I really liked NBA. I was actually a big Lakers fan because my best friend who lived next door was from California.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I was a big Lakers fan growing up, loved collecting basketball cards, never really got into football cards. And then in 1992, I remember getting an issue of, or being at Barnes, I think it was at Barnes and Noble or somewhere, and seeing the Mia Hamm card in the Sports Illustrated for Kids. And like they had a few cards before then, but like being like, oh wow, there's this woman on a card that's so cool. And that like I still have that Mia Hamm card. And when I look at it now, I think, damn you, Anne Marie. Why didn't you care more about borders and how you take perforated cards out of magazines after that one sold at the top of the market for like 24,000. Um,
Yeah.
and so I just started, I would go to small shows and stuff, and I would always be on the lookout for women's sport cards. And I would say probably in the last like, oh, I don't know, 10 or 15, 20 years, women's sport cards have become my collection. I don't really collect men's cards anymore, but I do sometimes like to rip packs because they're fun. So that's kind of my cardboard story. I'd say women's legends across generations and across sports, which is really broad. And there's been many times where I'm like, because people say to me like, man, like you have so many different sports, like you could have such a deeper collection if you focus on like one or two sports. And I think, yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe I should do that. And then I'm like, no, I like really love that I have like, you know, Merrill Davis autographs, and I have tennis greats, and I have a mini Olympians and all American girls professional baseball. I'm really interested in like the width, sometimes even more than the depth. And what kind of story, like the question I think myself and a lot of people have asked, particularly I think, since the card boom of during COVID is like, what kind of story do we want our collections to tell? Because we can't have every card, right? And I think in the last couple of years, I've been really trying to narrow down what is the story that I want, the narrative that I want my collection to tell. And I think it really is transformational athletes that, were legends in their sport, but even more so transform society through their participation.
I love the so how do you make a decision? Do you see a card and you're like, okay, let me do a little research. I'm not as familiar with this person, or do you say, I know I'm chasing this card, and I'm gonna go find it somewhere somehow?
Well, part of it is, there are so many, like, I'll talk to Cindy Dick, who is like amazing. Like, she is the expert
You
on
know I love Cindy.
on
Yep.
pre 1972 women's cards. And there are times where, like, I have a couple, like, I'll find a Wilma Rudolph card. I remember like messaging her and she'd never seen it before, right? Like, so part of it is not knowing what is out there. Like, we have a sense, right? But there
Right.
are those times where you'll come upon a card that's like, wow, like, I've never seen that card before. Um, I think for me, it's more, there are less cards I have to have, right? So, like, I would say my partition in the hobby is like uh, two kinds of folds, right? Like, one is the collecting and my cards and narrative in my PC, and the other is like participation. Like, I'll jump into breaks. Are they a good financial idea? Probably not, but I love the community and the fun, right? Like, so I do legends, but I also, like, I break a lot, like, I rip and open and collect a lot of like new sets because it's my access into the community. Because there's only so many Cindy Dix and Annemarie who are like, let's all talk about 1998, WNBA pinnacle, because they're like, that set was like the Prism before Prism, right? Like, so I think part of it is also for me, one of my friends, Morgan, said something to me this morning, and I actually met her. Like, it's so funny because you talk about like how things connect. I met her in a chat room on a McDonald's All American 2022 break that was like dirt cheap, right? Like dirt cheap. And I think we were the only people in there, including the person ripping it, that knew anything about the players. And she was like, yeah, I'm chasing this person. I'm like, oh, I have some extras. And like linked up with her. And like, it's a year later and we're like chatting on the phone this morning, right? And she said something I think that had like not occurred to me, because we were talking about being on breaks last night for the new Bowman Best product. It's so exciting to finally, like, women's sport cards are finally generating the kind of like buzz and excitement. And it's so exciting to be around in those spaces where people are having their like, oh my God, like, women's sports are really cool and there's cards. Because I'm kind of like, well, where the hell have you been? Right? Like, I have cards from the, like this isn't new. Like, we've been here, like, you gave us the right to vote in own land. Like, we've had cards too for a while, but it's really fun to be in those spaces where people are excited about it, because it's been like, yeah, like, we've been waiting for you to catch up.
I was about to say, sadly, there was cards well before the right to vote too. Um,
That's
so,
true.
so it just shows society loves cards way too
We love
much.
collectibles. We love marketing. I mean, a lot of
Yes.
it was like how you market, right?
Oh, it
And
was selling.
society,
It was selling bread or candy
cabinet cards, especially if you were
yeah.
attractive, but that hasn't really changed that much.
No,
So
that's why I do very little video interviews.
I do have a face for radio, right? But I mean, that's a big thing with NILs and stuff, where I'll talk to, sometimes companies will sort of pick my brain, or I'll reach out to people and I'll say, um, one of the things I like on it, as a company that has NIL cards and they have Ohio State is one of their licenses. What I like really like about them is some of the players and athletes are influencers, right? Like, especially in gymnastics, but
Yep.
they're actually doing something bold, which is picturing the athletes in their athletic uniforms instead of bathing suits. And I'm like, thank you. Right? Like, again, I'm all for, athletes capitalizing on their name and their marketability and their brand, but it's also really nice to have a card of an athlete actually in their uniform.
It is. As a University of Maryland fan,
Mhm.
I can't support the Ohio State love, but your point is very well made.
That's what, it's a little Big Ten love.
just for there we go. Big Ten love.
Right. You
No,
can't confuse it.
I've seen some of those cards, and as the father of a daughter, I got to tell you, maybe I'm getting old. Some of the actual uniforms are starting to look a little bit more like bathing suits than I remember.
Well, there's
Um,
always been that sort of sexualization of
yeah,
athletes across sports, so that isn't new. But I like when I see cards that actually depict females in their actual uniform. The
a-
little things that you don't really always think
absolutely.
about if you're only collecting in the men's landscape.
So, in general, the production of women's cards has just gone up tenfold, a hundredfold over the last 10 years. I mean, it's
Yes.
production.
I mean,
Production volume.
it's a really low bar, right? Like we get
Yes,
two WNBA sets instead of one, right? Like so,
yes.
like we get Parkside is probably has just done an incredible job getting
Shut up,
products
Jake.
out. Right, they are probably the best example because there are so many great Parkside products, like multiple products,
By the
and
way, if anybody wants to send me Parkside Series One, the blue boxes, the hanger boxes, I'm still happy to take those for
the
the
blue you're what you're not chasing the
Trinity
the
Rodman.
red boxes. Everyone's still chasing the Sophia and Trinity autos.
Yeah, exactly. But I pulled a Trinity out of a blue box.
Auto.
Yeah,
Okay, that was, I'm trying to remember what year that was, but I thought that was, it doesn't matter.
it doesn't.
But like
Yeah,
Parkside, there's so much, but like, have we come a far way because we're getting two Panini products instead of one? Are we coming a far way? You know what I mean? When
it's a
there, I
very
mean,
fair point.
it's getting better. Bowman has put more athletes in. We still don't have a hockey. We have women's professional hockey breaking records, and Upper Deck continues to sit on that licensing deal, which they've sat on for now 3 years. So I think it's getting better, right? But I wouldn't. It's still shockingly limited.
You are somebody who understands sales and marketing. I
Correct.
am shocked that there are not either flat out selling product or a giveaway at some of these women's sports events that are setting attendance records. If
Right.
I if I am selling a product and I'm looking at a market and you have 15 to 20,000 people watching basketball, volleyball, whatever it is, and these are records, how do you not, I mean, we're talking fanatics, we're talking major companies um, that can get in these buildings.
Right. Well,
Um,
again, the majority of people that collect women's sport cards and watch women's sports are men, right? But as someone who works in sport marketing and focuses on gender, right? There's going to be maybe higher percentages if you go to a WNBA game or women's hockey game that will be female fans in them. Women control household spending, right? So women
oh,
may not be on the floor of the national, but they're controlling all those transactions. So yeah, there's lots of room to be done. But I think we're also, like I have this like slide and I've been working with leagues since 2006, right? And I have this one slide that I have where it just says misogyny and a greater than sign and then profit. Because I think some companies and leagues and organizations are more tied to the story they've told themselves about women's sport and marketability and profitability, and that's so deeply rooted in part because of misogyny, that they're more interested in maintaining that than they are in making a profit.
is it better to grow women's sports in general, even if the companies use some level of sexualization,
Oh,
or
that's such a hard question. The problem with the problem with the struggle with that question is it shouldn't be an either or, right? Like I
it
have
should be?
been on women, I on Instagram, I've been a little snarky around the fact that every time I turn around, there's a new Bowman Now card for Caitlin Clark. I, in fact, took the Bowman You Now logo and just says Caitlin You, right? Look, I get that they have a lot of stickers that they have to use up before the license is done, right? And I understand Caitlin Clark. I am a Caitlin Clark fan, right? I've been a fan since she got there, right? But it's not going to necessarily grow. Like there are so many amazing narratives in women's college basketball today that are missing when the hobby focuses only on one. right? That Caitlyn is a part, I could argue Juju Watkins, Hannah Hidalgo. I mean, there's so many other athletes, and they're coming, they're sparse. I think they've done 2 Hannah cards, right? But I think to a certain extent, there's such opportunity right now because it's not a surprise, right? That during COVID, we saw massive declines in viewership of men's sports. What sport didn't have massive declines? WNBA, NWSL, right? At that point, the NWHL, because we just put them on more. That we found that when people have access to watching women's sports, they show up, right? They show up. But I worry sometimes that we create these products, like companies will do products like, the Donruss World Cup set, which was headlined by the women's cards. Any break room you went into, the USA women's spot was the most expensive spot, right? But they release it 3 days after the World Cup ends.
Yeah.
Right? Like that to a certain extent, it's sometimes it's frustrating when companies Panini. It's great to see Bowman has dual and triple autos of. We haven't had a dual auto in a WNBA set 2016, 2017.
So that was my question. If
Why?
Caitlin Clark goes to Indiana, don't you have back-to-back first overall picks together?
Yes. And there and
How is that not the coolest double auto?
I'll see your double auto and raise you. We did an entire parallel for the WW 25th anniversary. Why isn't there a Sue Bird, right? Why isn't there a Sue Bird, Brianna Stewart, or a Cynthia Cooper, Brianna Stewart card?
Yeah.
We have a parallel celebrating the 25th. Why is there not? Panini hasn't done a relic card until this year with Origins. Like the things that we take for granted, like when people would ask me, they're like, "Are you upset that Panini Origins isn't player specific?" And I'm like, "No, because I don't have this is better than nothing, right?" I think part of it is when people say like, "Are women's sports cards, do they underperform?" I'm like, I don't know what a good set looks like. I mean, Panini's good. I mean, Prism's a good set, kind of boring. Revolution was the wrong set to release. Chronicles would have been a smarter release, right? But I think the women's sport card market is smaller than men's, 100%. But if what we know about women's sport fans is that they have a higher fan avidity, right? Like I can't just like trip and find a PHL game on ESPN or ABC, right? So women's sport fans have a higher fan avidity. Fan avidity is the greatest predictor of spend. So knowing what we know as someone who's a business professor in marketing and sport marketing.
I was about to say, you sound like
there may be fewer female sport collectors, but our average spend is going to be higher. We're going to spend more. I also, in thinking about companies like Leaf and Onyx and others, I think because we have so few products, women's sport fans are also more open to unlicensed products because beggars can't choose.
When you said the bar so low, I just keep hearing that comment every time you say something.
I mean, okay. Like Sydney, like we put the wrong picture. Christy Tolliver and Sydney Weiss are 2 totally different people, right? Now there's errors in every set. Georgia Moore's Bowman's best card, autograph card, has the University of Virginia logo on it, even though she plays for Virginia Tech. Like there's some mistakes that get made, right? I think we've seen wild mistakes in the women's
game. I'll say that's male and female. The companies
absolutely.
are making far too many mistakes in general.
But you had a Panini set where they're using pictures like Benija Laney's 2021 card was of 2 teams that she was on ago.
Yeah.
The picture was like 3 years old, right? And so some of it is, what kind of pictures they can get. But, I think there's incredible growth in the women's game. I mean, there's never been a better time to be a female athlete, to be a female sport property, or to be a female sport collector, collecting women's sport. There's never been a better time.
Okay, 2 questions, both hypothetical. One, you get to design your own set from beginning to end for WNBA?
Mm.
What is important to you to have in that set?
I would design I would say autographs.
I'll give you all the license, so you have everything.
Oh, if I could do anything, I would
Yeah,
want to. I would honestly, if I could design a WNBA set, I would design a set that features the greatest WNBA players, and I would do cards that are combos, the greatest centers of all time. Right? Wouldn't it be great to do a
Lisa Leslie.
Lisa Leslie, Sylvia Fowles? I would focus on relics. I would focus on autos. I would look here and now cards. I think it would be really and honestly, I would do a triple auto of Caitlin Clark, Lynette Woodward, and Pearl Moore. I would even go back further. I would do a subset from AIW and other leagues, barnstorming leagues. I would do relics of players from the 50s. A Nara White relic would be kick ass. I would tell a story with it.
That's very cool. And that's going to lead into my next question.
Mm-hmm.
Women's sports history. Whether or not it actually exists, what piece of memorabilia would you want from women's sports history? Is there a ball from a specific match? Is there a tape at the end of a run? Is there,
I
is there
mean,
something that just has a significance, you
I
think?
think what's funny is I feel like the things that I would want, I wouldn't want them for myself. I'd want them to be in a museum, right?
Sure.
I would want the Baseball Hall of Fame to have a greater section on the All-American Girls Baseball League. I mean, I would want I would want to put those things in the hands of people that that are storytellers, historians that are storytellers, and how we weave those stories in. So I don't know if there's anything that like I would personally want. One of the things that I did during COVID to occupy my time and keep me from going crazy is I made a list of what I thought was the top 100 female basketball players of all time. And then I said about I wanted the rookie card of each of those. But then there were also players like Nara White or Pearl Moore that like don't have a card. Louisa Harris Stewart. So I had to get in their place. I did authenticated like autos on either tickets or on stuff like that. So I've thought about creating, and I kind of created that list for soccer and others. I honestly, if there's one thing I desperately want, and I actually had this conversation with folks with Tops for Fanatics, it is mind-boggling to me that there has not been a Katie Ledecky autograph card released. There is only 2 Sport Illustrated cards of Katie Ledecky, and that's it. And how is it possible? One of the greatest Olympians of our lifetime, Katie Ledecky, does not. I don't have a Katie Ledecky auto.
And I believe she's from Maryland.
I don't. That's great. Oh, I've had company where I'm like, do you not like making money? Do you not like do you just dislike money? If there's one gap, there's a few gaps in my collections. I don't have a Katie Ledecky auto. I would love, I need one of those.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it. It would be nice if there was more people signing autographs. So let's say the National.
Well, and that's always a fun.
I'll say it as my own thoughts. There's a lot of autographs I would be interested in getting if they were there. It wouldn't just be a niche group. I'll say that
it shouldn't take a small Instagram of like 4,000 people poking to get Angel Reese at the National. We should be beyond that. And luckily, working with the women in the hobby group, we were able, and Parkside, we were able to host NWSL signers. We hosted Athletes Unlimited signers. So the people in the hobby are doing the work that maybe the big corporations in the hobby should be doing.
I find that to be very important, and I wanted to make sure that I got that point across for myself. Real quick before we wrap up, Where do you see the women in the hobby going forward?
Like
What's
women's
the
cards or
women's cards, women's sports? What's the next step? What's
yeah,
the next
you know,
growth?
I think, and this is always like um I think you're going to see more varieties. I think you're going to see, NILs have been a boom for women's sports and women's ability. I mean, women have always been great social media marketers. I think you're going to see a lot of niche sets. I think you're going to see more niche sets. I think it'll be interesting to see what the Olympic push is. Um, I hope we're going to have greater variety of cards. I'd really like to see a sort of premium. I'd love to see a national treasures for WNBA. I
Done
think,
right.
but I also think a lot of the companies will continue to have to be pushed by collectors. And again, I think the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, just the social movements that have asked questions and pushed society. Title IX for me, I think Title IX was a legal revolution for women's sports, but I think the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matters have created an environment which is really the social revolution that has allowed women's voices to be more prominent. So I think it's never been a better time to be involved and interested in women's sports, and I think bringing more. I think there's going to be a greater voices coming into the community and interests. I do think one of the struggles, and I'm a part of groups that are struggling with this, is that I've been a moderator in groups where it's been prior to if you're a WNBA prior to 2020. These groups were really small and insulated, and people knew each other, and the community was all about community. Well, Sabrina comes in, Prism comes to the table, and these groups have gotten so much bigger with a lot of people that don't see card collecting, that don't see it as a community, see it as a marketplace. And I think a lot of groups are struggling with, well, what does that mean now, right? When the ideals of how we treat each other and how we see each other and trading, like I think what these are some new problems that a lot of groups are having and will just become even greater with Caitlin Clark's, that as our communities get bigger, I mean they will have to change, but that idea of what does community mean when new membership flowing in, maybe see it more as a marketplace and as a place of transaction more than a place of discussion and friendship.
I could take the end of that last statement, and I've probably had 3 or 4 men make the same concerns and complaints in groups.
Yeah.
I think it's a hobby problem.
Yeah.
To your point, you're 100% correct. I'm not disputing that, but I see it
Right.
in multiple places. Um, okay, well, I've used up most of our time here.
Cool.
But where can people get involved if they're interested? Women in
My
the hobby
My Instagram is
and
on
your
Women on Tops. I'm not on YouTube or anything else because nobody wants to see my face.
stop it.
It's all about the cards. My voice matters more. It's all about the cards. So find me on Instagram, Women on Tops. I ship cards out, women's sport cards out every other day. It feels like, to coaches and parents that can give away women's cards. So my goal is just to expand the reach of the visibility of women's sport cards everywhere.
Well, you do a great job. Real quick, I know you just did a program in Seattle, and that was very successful. Let people know like what types of things moving forward if they want to donate
Yeah,
cards.
if you have women's sport cards sitting around, base cards, whatever, I message me and I collect them and distribute them out. Get lots of requests. I broke 40,000 cards given out last year, and I'm going to break 50,000 this year. But it only happens because people donate the cards that are cluttering their desks. And ship them off to me, and then I ship them off, and it's free for people who request cards. So it's just our way of giving back.
Annemarie, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining us.
so much, Jenny. This was so fun.
All right, go back to being the Professor Batman.
Boring.
Yes. Well, I'm glad we got to nerd out. Thank you so much to
Thank you so
everybody else.
much.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Great. Have
Take
a great
care.
day.